I paid $3,500 in family debt, and they still said was just here to feel important. I cut them off. I'm done buying your love. No more money. My mom said, yeah, poor thing thinks money makes her family. I entered my parents' house by the side door and heard my uncle say, she's just here to feel important. Then she turned to face me. The reason this family will never receive another dollar from me is because I said, you're right. The side door was not meant for me to enter. Normally, I wouldn't, but those rusty folding chairs were piled up on the front porch as if someone hadn't realized the BBQ was more than 3 weeks ago. I went around as I didn't want to drag them aside. It smelled somewhat like old paint and potting dirt, and the side door creaked as it always had. It was noisy in the home. The blender was in operation when I heard my mother's chuckle, but in a slower, deeper voice. Parker, my uncle. I wasn't attempting to enter covertly. I simply hadn't had a chance to greet them yet. Then I heard him say it, though. A brief silence was followed by the statement. She's just here to feel important. I halted just inside the mudroom, still holding my keys, and my mother said, yeah, poor thing thinks money makes her family. Then I entered. My mother was the first to turn. Like she had been caught pilfering from a church basket, she turned pale. My uncle simply stared at the floor as if the crumbs had suddenly taken on new significance. I said, you're right. Before anyone could reply, I said, which is why this family won't see another dollar from me ever. I had no intention of staying to facilitate their recuperation. The fact that I had been going above and beyond for these people for the last 5 months only made it worse. After my sister Sophie's boyfriend left town, she quietly accumulated $3,500 in credit card debt, which I paid off without notifying anyone. In October, my mom sobbed as I delivered the $11,800 to fix my parents' broken heating system. I was a gift, she claimed. It was only 3 months ago. All of a sudden, though, I was only here to feel significant. They had muttered something sideways before, but this was the first time they had done so while assuming I couldn't hear. Additionally, there is a distinction. The odd thing is that I didn't even experience anger. Just empty, not immediately. It was as if something that had been keeping me upright had finally failed. I didn't return home. I visited a motel. Not a pleasant one, either. Just a Holiday Inn next to the shopping center. That night, as I lay in bed with the TV on silent, I realized that I couldn't recall the last time I'd gone to see them without having to pay for something. Groceries, presents, airline tickets, and repairs. I even owned the wine they served at Christmas. Nevertheless, they were able to turn everything into something unsightly. I shut down my phone the following day. The following day, I switched it back on. 30 texts, mostly from my mother, 1 from Uncle Parker, and, for some reason, just a thumbs up emoji. And just 2 words from Sophie, call me. And 1 from my brother, Wyatt. I listen to him when he speaks, but he never says much. He was trying, but he didn't understand. I know they were out of line, but you disappearing won't fix it either. I was not going to vanish. I was evolving. The problem is that I had become accustomed to the notion that love had to be earned. That perhaps their perception of me would change if I simply provided enough assistance, helped enough, and resolved enough issues. However, it only made them feel entitled and at ease. I therefore stopped responding to solicitations for money. Despite being in town that month, I failed to attend Sophie's birthday dinner. Usually, my dad would ask me to address his cable bill mess, but I let him manage it. I also told my mother no when she called to ask if I could help pay for new patio furniture before the spring sales expired. Simply put, no. No justification. On the other end, there was stillness. Take a moment. Then, for the first time in my life, I heard her say, okay. It wasn't a clean break either. Not at all. Initially, they simply became colder, with fewer images in the family group chat and less warmth in their texts. For a while, Sophie even blocked me. But then something changed. Small things. My father began phoning me to inquire about my well-being. Just to converse, not to seek for assistance. I received a picture of a pie my mother cooked via text. She claimed that the recipe I'd given her the previous year worked quite well. They didn't express gratitude for what I had done. Not quite yet. However, they began to treat me more like a person they wanted around and less like a safety net. And I didn't anticipate that. I also didn't anticipate who would attempt to reverse everything. Uncle Xavier. He was just getting started, and I had no idea that he couldn't bear it. To be honest, I didn't see that coming from him. Uncle Xavier never took a major part in anything. At family gatherings, he was the person who would arrive late, make everyone wait to eat because he wanted to make a toast, and then steal a six-pack before anyone realized he hadn't brought any food. He would act as though he was bored by family drama. However, it seems that he was concerned about my change. Thanksgiving was when the first clue appeared. I didn't intend to go. I was ready to skip it because it was still too close after the side door event. However, Wyatt called to invite me. He claimed that Sophie wanted to talk, and that things had calmed down. I went even though I knew better than to fully trust that. I considered the possibility that they could be prepared to cease portraying me as an enemy. As it happens, Uncle Xavier wasn't. But they were. At first, it was subtle. He kept making financial jokes about Stacy, the sponsor, and our little Rockefeller. When someone proposed going to Florida, he exclaimed loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Better get Stacy to book it." I didn't answer. That's the tradition, right? I didn't have to. It was the first time my dad had said, quietly but clearly, "Knock it off, Xavier." Uncle Xavier poured himself another drink and simply grinned as if he hadn't heard him. Later, I heard him conversing with my mother in the kitchen. I didn't even try to hear. I heard my name as soon as I opened the door after going in for more water. He claimed that she was now allowing me to take advantage of them, that I was using quiet and guilt to manipulate them, and that I was holding money hostage in order to obtain what I needed. After a moment of standing, I walked straight in. Despite her astonished expression, my mother remained silent. Uncle Xavier continued without pausing. I didn't respond as he turned to face me and asked, "You think because you paid a few bills that you're better than this family?" I glanced at my mother. She remained silent. I then departed once more. I contacted Wyatt that evening and informed him of the situation. "I think he's jealous. You're independent. You got out." "He didn't," he added with a sigh. That had never occurred to me before. Uncle Xavier and his girlfriend had been renting the same home since the early 2000s, and they had been living there for 9 years. No actual employment, no children. He hopped from one thing to another. There were always tales of the market or a project that never materialized. Perhaps he too needed to feel significant. He wasn't merely envious, though. He was getting down to business. My mother stopped phoning the next month. My father texted me in shorter bursts. I sensed the change. It was slight, like if the room's temperature had been lowered by a few degrees, but it was there. And I was certain of who had pressed the button. I thus didn't just let it happen this time. I asked my parents over the phone if the three of us could have a conversation. No distractions, no family. I was invited to join them for supper. It was uncomfortable. While preparing lasagna, my mother kept bringing up the weather. At last, I said, "I know Xavier's saying things to you, and I know you're listening, but you need to ask yourself why someone who doesn't even take care of his own life is so invested in managing yours." It became quiet. I nodded as my father continued, "We know. We've just had him in our ear for a long time. You should stop listening now." I wasn't upset. I simply felt finished. Something changed that night. I believe they actually heard me. Uncle Xavier wasn't finished yet, though, since the farther I retreated, the more he tried to entice me back, and it wasn't going to be words when I saw him again. There was going to be a full-scale attempt to blow everything up. Sophie's first baby shower was held at a small winery outside of town. It's the kind of property that appears better on pictures than in reality, complete with false rustic charm and string lights. My mother had dedicated herself to organizing it as if it were a royal wedding. Custom cupcakes, personalized treats, and a diaper raffle with prizes more expensive than the diapers themselves. I received the invitation directly from her. We pretended to be official now, and there was only one of those pastel pink envelopes in the mail with my entire name printed on it. No text, no call. Before sending in my RSVP, I gazed at it for 3 days. I kind of wanted to avoid it. It had been months since Sophie, and I had a meaningful talk. Perhaps turning up would matter, though, and if not for her, then perhaps for myself, according to the other part of me that still held out hope that things could be fixed. I purposely arrived 10 minutes late. Enough time to allow the audience to calm down and divert attention from newcomers. I crept in, hugged Sophie, expressed my admiration for her clothing, gave her a gift card concealed in a designer onesie, and took a seat at the edge of the main table. There were Wyatt and his girlfriend. My mother was beaming as though she had orchestrated a spectacular show. Subsequently, I noticed Uncle Xavier standing close to the drinks table, seemingly in charge of the establishment. I've already had 2 glasses of red and am laughing too much at something that nobody else finds funny. I didn't greet them. He didn't either. Everything went without a hitch. The games were surprisingly dumb as usual. The meal was passable, and Sophie genuinely appeared content, radiating in that worn-out, huge baby on the way kind. I allowed myself to think that things had changed for a while. Then Uncle Xavier abruptly got to his feet. No transition. No introduction. "Before we get to the gifts, I just want to say something about family." He got up from his chair, holding a glass of wine, and a few others gave him an awkward applause. My stomach fell. That tone seemed familiar to me. It was the voice of a man who needed to feel superior in order to be happy. He began slowly, like if he were preparing for something. He discussed the importance of turning up for family. How genuine love is more important than money. Some individuals believe that giving money makes them saints, but in reality, it only makes them noisy. My face went frigid all around. Every statement had my fingerprints on it, even though he never mentioned my name. Sophie lowered her gaze. My mother began to stress over a napkin that didn't require repair. My father did not move. And I believe Uncle Xavier concluded that we must remember what true connection looks like if we are to raise this generation properly. Just family, not guilt or leverage. He sat down as if he had found a solution to world peace. Nobody applauded. The atmosphere was rigid. Then I got up and Wyatt murmured, "Jesus Christ." I looked at him and no one else. He grinned as if it were a joke, but nobody was laughing when I responded. The only person in this room using guilt is you. Because you feel intimidated, you are unable to take a position and change the story. I wanted to give. So I did. No one else would help. So I did. However, you act as though you have earned a voice and arrive when it's convenient for you. I went to my parents. You've allowed him to try to force himself into this for years. He doesn't, however, add anything. He doesn't assist. He is not in favor. He merely speaks. I hesitated, but nobody intervened. Because he couldn't do it himself, I won't continue to defend myself for doing morally. You will lose more than you think if you continue to allow him to lead this family. I didn't hold out for a response. I stayed clear. Completed. I ignored my phone when I got home. I didn't want an apology. More words weren't what I wanted. I wanted evidence that someone in that room was aware of what had just transpired. My father phoned the following morning. I answered. Even though I nearly didn't. He stated, "Your mom and I talked. We asked Xavier to give us space. He's not welcome at family events for a while. We've let him say too much for too long." I remained silent for a moment. Then, more powerfully than anything Xavier could have uttered, he added, "We see it now and we're sorry." It wasn't closure when Sophie replied later that week. Short, simple. "Thanks for showing up. That couldn't have been easy." Then, she added, "He always talked down to me, too." It was something, but not just yet. I also thought that perhaps I hadn't lost my family for the first time in years. Perhaps I simply stopped allowing it to be controlled by someone else. I thought the customary quiet would return after the baby shower. This was the pattern in our family. There was an explosion, some uneasy fallout, and then radio silence until someone feigned to forget or needed something. That cycle was something I was prepared for. I had already begun to get ready for another 5 months of civil detachment. However, it was not the case. Rather, 3 days later, my mother called casually as if nothing had happened. She asked me how work was doing, mentioned a British crime show she was involved with, and told me the peonies were flowering early this year. Half because she enjoyed it, and half because of the actor's humorous dialogue. That was it. Uncle Xavier is not mentioned. No clumsy apology concealed in a digression. Just a discussion. She then asked me to come over. It's just for lunch, nothing special. We sat on the terrace outside while she prepared sandwiches. It was both unfamiliar and familiar. Halfway through, my dad stopped by to say he was happy I had returned. No hidden requests, no strings attached. I awaited the request, but it never materialized. They invited me to my dad's birthday movie night in the backyard the next week. Sophie was also present, acting like she owned the yard while waddling around with her third trimester belly. In fact, she gave me a gift bag. A small white onesie with the words "Cool Aunt" written in gold letters was inside. She grinned and added, "It was either that or financial sponsor." I laughed not because it was hilarious, but because, for the first time in a long time, it seemed like we were laughing at each other rather than at me. They continued to invite me to little events, like Sunday meals and sporadic Wednesday ice cream runs. My mom began texting me pictures once more, including screenshots of recipes she wanted to try, her flowers, and the cat resting in strange locations. After a dental appointment, my dad even called to let me know that the hygienist had remembered me and continued to inquire about the one daughter who had gone to the city. The invitation then arrived. A long weekend at Lake George was not what I had anticipated. At first, I believed it was an error. Actually, I was expecting a follow-up text that would say something like, "Sorry, wrong, Stacy," or something like, "We know you probably can't make it, but we felt we should invite you anyway." Instead, it said, "We'd love for you to come. We're renting 2 cabins." I volunteered nevertheless, saying, "Just be there. No pressure to pay for anything. Old habits are hard to break." My mother said no. "We're paying for this." I didn't want that to hit me so hard. They didn't expect me to, Not because I couldn't afford it. I began to think that perhaps they were making an effort at that point. Perhaps calling out Xavier had caused them to think more clearly. Or perhaps they had had enough of acting like they did. Naturally, though, he slithered back in as soon as I began to unwind. I received a call from an unidentified number 1 week prior to the trip. I picked it up, thinking it was spam or something related to my job. Uncle Xavier was there. He did not even greet me. "You think they've changed? You think this is real?" he asked, and I said nothing. He said, "They're playing you. They always were. But sure, keep showing up like it's a Hallmark movie." I hang up. He texted me 2 minutes later. Just one picture. It was a screen grab of him, my mother, and Sophie in a group chat. There was my name. My mother's message said, 1 week prior to the baby shower, they went on a date. She acts like she's doing us favors. I'm starting to feel like we're just part of her charity project. My stomach fell. I sat for a long time looking at it. I wasn't surprised. Not at all. However, the timing did. I began to question whether the "we want you around" communications and the invitations to return 1 week earlier were genuine. I didn't respond, nor to Sophie, nor to Xavier, not even to my mother. I took a screenshot of it. I simply needed a reminder of my true position, not out of animosity. I considered canceling the vacation, leaving everyone in the dark, and leaving them to wonder why. However, Sophie called me 3 days later. A full phone call, not a text. That was surprising in and of itself. He wasted no time. Xavier has been contacting everyone. I received the identical screenshot from him. He desires a response. I said very little. I had no idea where she was taking it. I froze when she continued. We confronted Mom. She acknowledged it. Claimed that she wrote it out of anger. That she didn't intend it, and that she felt foolish afterward. I advised her to be truthful with both herself and you. I said nothing. Then Sophie added, "We want this trip to be real, not just another fake gathering. We're tired of pretending everything's fine." We advised her to speak up if she wanted to make things right. Everything. I let out a breath because, for the first time, it wasn't me doing the work, not because anything had been fixed. And at that moment, I came to another realization. Uncle Xavier had no intention of warning me. He was attempting to blow up an event to which he was not invited. Being the puppet master in other people's lives was the only thing he had left, and he was losing control of it. And he was going to discover how far out he truly was at Lake George. Alone, I drove up. From where I lived, the trip took 3.5 hours, and I was alternating between two emotions the whole time. One was cautious hope, the kind in which you're practically scared to express your desire for success. The other was a dull distrust, as if I were entering a trap and everyone else had practiced their roles beforehand. I was surprised by how wonderful the cabins were. Not prefabricated wood, but real wood. 2 hammocks were swaying despite the lack of wind, and there was a fire pit in the center. When Sophie saw me pull in, she waved. She had a platter of grapes balanced on her abdomen, and her ankles were bulging. She exclaimed, "You made it." As if I were the honored guest. Everyone behaved normally. No awkward silences, no strain. My father cooked burgers on the grill. My mother inquired about her job. Wyatt joked that without YouTube, I was still unable to light a campfire.